There. You are live. Okay. We're live there, but yeah, it's linking across.
Oh, it's exciting.
Okay. Oh, it's flipped it. I can see it double. That's horrible. Okay. We're doing it.
Cool.
And we're live. We made it. Hi, everybody. For anyone watching live or joining us at a later date, I'm Dr. Liz, and this is my first Dr. Liz Live. I'll be doing a series of live interviews with special guests over the summer, sharing their stories of navigating the crisis that is women's health and sharing their experiences of how they got diagnosed, treatments, what they didn't know that they wish they knew, and I'll be giving my medical insights. And today I am joined by the lovely and bubbly Gwen Crabb, who is a Welsh rugby star. And rugby star, is that the right word? Rugby
We'll go with it.
Rugby legend, Welsh rugby legends. And I'm really excited to have you as my first guest. So before we start, I just want to do a bit of an icebreaker to kind of lighten the mood, to get to know you a bit more. So yeah. 5 quick fire questions, and the last one's a bit random.
Okay.
Are you ready for this?
Yeah.
Right. Coffee, hot or iced?
Hot. Got it right now.
Introvert or extrovert?
Somewhere in the middle.
Yeah, same. I have my introverted days and my extrovert.
Yeah. Yeah.
But 1 day out and then 10 days hidden in a cave.
Yeah, exactly.
Early mornings or late nights?
Early mornings, 100%.
Really?
Yeah.
I suppose that's the training in you, isn't it, though?
Yeah, I don't want to be awake past 9:30 ever.
That's like starting to wind down. I don't think if I can get this side of midnight and be asleep, I would be delighted.
It's impressive.
That's the ADHD side, I think, kicking in there.
Yeah.
Popcorn, salty or sweet?
Salty and sweet.
Mixed, yeah.
Sweet and salty, you know the ones.
Mixed. Podcasts or reading?
Podcasts. I love podcasts. Honestly, I reckon I'm up there on like Spotify's top podcast list now. Genuinely. Yeah.
Do you listen as you train or listen as you drive or?
Yeah, sometimes when I'm training, driving, cleaning, I pretty much wake up in the morning and I have podcasts or music on for the majority of the day. I think my Spotify minutes last year was like 90,000. Something crazy, yeah.
Oh my gosh, that's insane. Wow.
Yeah, I know.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Wow. So you're pushing certain channels up to the top.
I am. Yeah, you're welcome.
And the last one, and this is a random one, I need to get this right. Would you rather fight one horse-sized duck or 100 duck-sized horses?
I think 100 duck-sized horses. No. Yeah. Because I could probably punch them. This is horrible. I don't advocate for violence against animals whatsoever. But like, I can't defend myself against a duck that big.
Right. Yeah, a horse-sized duck, I think would be.
Yeah, that's huge.
Terrifying. Yeah.
Yeah. Whereas maybe I can defend myself against many little ones. You know.
And actually, little tiny duck-sized horses would be so cute.
It would be really cute, actually. So I wouldn't want to actually
bundle them up. Tiny horses just running around.
It'd be so cute.
Well, from that random topic.
Yeah.
So when you've got an incredible experience, kind of professionally and personally, and we were chatting before we went live, and you have the classic story that so many women can relate to. But not only were you dealing with that, you entered a professional career in your teens, essentially. Mm-hmm. So tell me your story. Tell me how you came into rugby, because I know you were originally in football.
Yeah.
and then you switched to rugby. So just tell me how these two paths of sports woman of the year to like ending up a week away from having surgery at 26.
Yeah. So like you mentioned, like I've been very sporty my whole life. I've played all sorts of sports. But I played mostly football until I was about 13 or 14, from the age of like 3 or 4, basically. And then I kind of got to 13, 14. I wasn't really enjoying football. I was really losing the love for it. I think I peaked too soon, and I kind of put too much pressure on myself to be at an elite level from such a young age that actually I just didn't enjoy it anymore. And luckily, one of the girls I played football with also played rugby, and she said, just come along to one of these like trial sessions. So I was like, okay, like I'll give anything a go. And honestly, from that first session that I went there, it was like my favorite thing. And at that point, it was only once a week on a Monday, and I just can remember like every week just waiting for Monday to come around again so I could go back to rugby. And from there, it just grew and grew. And actually, I think my background in loads of other sports helped me be able to push to a higher level in rugby quicker, if that makes sense. So I only first picked up a rugby ball really when I was 14, and by 17, I was being brought into the senior side, and training with the senior women's team for Wales, which was just crazy. Obviously, a lot happened in between then, but yeah, that was kind of my path into rugby. And actually, interestingly, it was around that time when I started rugby was when I had my first period. So I always it's interesting because I've never really played rugby without horrendous periods, when you think of it that way, because it kind of lined up around a similar time. There might have been like a few months difference, but yeah, pretty much since I started playing rugby, I got my first period. And so until recently, where I've started medication that stopped my periods, and a brief period where I was on the contraceptive pill, I have gone through my whole entire career and built this career for the last 12 years, whilst dealing with these like horrendous endometriosis symptoms as well. But actually, like, not even realizing that was what was going on, which is kind of crazy.
And that's the thing, isn't it? Because it's
Yeah.
normalized or dismissed for so long,
Yeah.
you think that you've got no choice but to just get on with it and deal with it. And I think that's what so many people end up in, that place of being resigned, because they're told it's normal. So you think, oh, it's just me. People think, oh, it's just me. It's just heavy periods. This is what it is to be a woman. I mean, to think that you got to such a fantastic point in your career whilst dealing with that, do you ever think how much, I mean, you can't really get much higher than you are, but do you just not think, oh my gosh, how much easier the journey might have been had you not been dealing with that?
Yeah, I think it's hard to kind of like think back and like think how would that have been if that wasn't the case, because that's my experience. But I do think that in a sport like rugby, it's very much mental toughness, resilience. Like those are the kind of traits that are driven and kind of celebrated, I suppose, in that sport. So for me, the get your head down and get on with it, that came with, other types of injuries and stuff where you're like, hey, I'm in a little bit of pain, but I've just got to get through it. I've just got to get through it. Like that mental toughness, if you want to call it, I think that almost fed into well, this is just another thing I've just got to get through. And I think because I didn't know it wasn't normal, I just assumed everyone else was also feeling the same. And so it's like, well, you can't complain because everyone feels this way. And it's just something that it's also like until recently been extremely taboo as well. So it's not something I was going up to my 16-year-old teammates and being like, oh, my period is horrendous. Like there's blood clots coming out of me. Like no tomorrow. Do you know what I mean? Like I'm not going to say that to them because I'm embarrassed. I just assume that that's what they're experiencing too. But there was actually like so many occasions where like I'd have to rush to the toilet because I would just had bled through, like all sorts of situations like that I just didn't, like in hindsight now, I would talk to anyone about that now, but when you're so young, you just want to fit in, you just want to be liked by your friends, you just want to like feel normal, I suppose. I didn't have any concept of the fact that wasn't normal, so that was just what I was kind of just getting through, if that makes sense.
So when did you first think something's not right here, or go to try and get help from the GP? Like, was it the pain or was it the heavy bleeding?
It was both. So actually, in my first few periods, after my first few periods, we went to the GP, me and my mum. So I was only 14. There was like can remember. I think it was like the summer holidays when I first came on my period, but I couldn't leave the house really in the first 3 days because every time I'd like be sat down and get up, I would just
Or
basically bleed
that?
through pads, and
Yeah.
yeah, I couldn't use tampons. It was too painful. Like all of this, but interestingly, I was on a podcast recently and I touched on it, but my mum was never diagnosed with endometriosis. She got diagnosed with PCOS, but never endo. But she had her appendix out quite traumatically, had ruptured appendicitis. But the doctor was like, I think that we saw endometriosis, or we think we saw some, but she never got diagnosed.
Yeah.
So her experience growing up with periods was identical to mine. So although we were like, okay, something's not right, let's go to the GP. Once we did that a few times and nothing came of it, it then was kind of like, okay, well, maybe this just is normal because that was her experience of normal too, which is through no fault of her own. That's just through lack of education in the previous generation too. And so I think for a while then it just became unspoken about because it was like, well, this is just what it's like to be a woman, and so we're just gonna go with it. And yeah,
Sorry, what happened when you went to the GP those first few times? Would
they just said go on the pill, and
and
I was like,
nothing,
yeah,
and nothing,
and
no
yeah.
discussion of anything else.
Nothing. It was just like, look, it's your first few periods. Like, it's going to take time to regulate itself and settle. And I was like, okay, I kind of understand that. Like, maybe it'll be a bit crazy for a bit and then it'll settle. But ultimately, it never did. I think, again, just being in, and probably from being in sports from a young age, my mindset very much was, I am tough. I can get through anything. Like, I was very strong-willed. And so I think after that, those first few trips to the GP where I got turned away, I just kind of accepted it because it wasn't something that I particularly had time to be focusing on. Obviously, you're going through your GCSEs. I'm trying to play elite sport, like doing all of that at the same time, trying to manage friendships, relationships, everything else. I just kind of forgot about it, and just it was just something that was part of my monthly routine, basically. And at that time, it was just the symptoms I were getting. The symptoms I was getting were predominantly whilst I was on my period. So for 25 days out of the month, I could forget about it, and it was
Yeah.
just that 4 or 5, 6 days where it was ridiculously heavy. I was really tired, couldn't concentrate, in so much pain. And then I would just forget about it again. So I think for a period of time, it was, I'm not going to say manageable, but in a way it was because it was for a short amount of time every month, if that makes sense.
And you didn't go on the pill. You opted not to.
So I chose not to until I was 18. And then I chose to go on the pill for contraception. So I didn't think anything. I think I maybe thought as an afterthought, like, oh, it'll regulate my periods, maybe, or because obviously they say you're not going to have a period, you'll have a withdrawal bleed. So I was like, okay, well maybe this will just like also manage my period symptoms or whatever. And to be fair, it did. Then for 4 years, I actually remember the last time I had like a ridiculously bad period was, that you start taking a pill on the day one of your period. And I can remember that period being particularly horrendous because I was away in France and I was sharing a room with my dad and my dad's friend because we were watching a rugby tournament, and I was in so much pain up all night, like painkillers not touching the sides. And that was the last memory then of having like a really rough period for 4 years. And so across that 4 years, just like kind of forgot about it all, if I'm being honest, because it masked the symptoms. And then I decided to come off the pill. I think I listened to an audio book, can't remember what one it was now, but about hormones and regulating, like being able to regulate your hormones and the effect that the pill can have sometimes and all of this stuff. So I was like, okay, I'm going to try and be a hormone free athlete and work with my menstrual cycle and all this kind of stuff. So I came off the pill, and that first period was the worst ever. It was absolutely horrendous. Like I couldn't get out of bed for 3 days. I was trying to do uni from my laptop because it was like in COVID. It was just awful. And I
And the
was
thing
like,
is,
oh,
had you even known that there was the potential to have an endometriosis underlying, when you've had those early conversations with the GP about, heavy periods, painful periods, you might not have wanted to go down the route of getting a
yeah,
diagnosis that early. And the GP might have been right. Teenagers, they do tend to settle down and can be a bit turbulent until they regulate. But had you even known there was a chance? Because if you've got endometriosis, that pill is suppressing it, that it's putting it in a sedative state. And that's exactly what happened to me. That's how I didn't know until I decided to come off the pill. And it's like you open the floodgates. It's the worst thing, because suddenly it's reactivated and it's going to come alive again, and you were met with...
And you're not used to then, it's been 4 years since I've suffered with this pain. So it was horrendous. Like, I didn't even know endometriosis was a thing. I didn't even know what it was. I didn't even heard of the word. I'd never heard of the word. And until actually, so I came off the pill. Then around a year or so later, maybe, a year or two later, I had quite a severe knee injury, and one of the other girls in the team had a similar injury. We were rehabbing together, and we had these blood tests in training, and hers came back with really low iron. So they went to like investigate that, and then she ended up going, and it was all behind the scenes, but she ended up going and having a laparoscopy and being diagnosed with endometriosis. And that was the first time I heard the word. I was like, whoa, what is this? And we got we got closer as we were rehabbing on the injuries. And so I learnt a lot through her. We started a podcast together and had her surgeon, now my surgeon, on the podcast. And that was where I started to think, oh, I have this too. Because until then, even when she first got diagnosed, I didn't really look too much into it. I was like speaking about her experience, and she had some symptoms that I don't, and vice versa. And so I kind of was like, okay, this is what that is. But then actually when we had the surgeon on the podcast, and he was saying all of these different symptoms, and I was like, tick, 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 tick. And then off air, I was like, look, I think I have this. And he was like, yeah, I'm 90% sure you do, like 95% sure you do. I was like, brilliant. And that was in September 2023. and then I got diagnosed in December 2025. So yeah, pretty
And
crazy.
How old were you then at 23 when you first thought this is what it could be?
24. I was 24 then.
10 years with symptoms, and that's the first time you even heard the word and had suspicion.
Yeah, exactly.
And how, I know the answer to this, but what happened then how did you actually get the diagnosis confirmed?
So I went back to the GP probably start of last year. I started trying to go back to the GP again. And I was having all sorts of different symptoms, like the symptoms just progressed and worsened. I was really suffering with I was basically bleeding constantly in some way or another. So during my period, I'd be heavy bleeding of actual blood, and then it would be like different types of blood throughout the month, and it would just be like constant. And I was like, I'm so confused what this is, like, what is this? And then obviously I went to the GP, and they kept doing STI tests and all of this, and I was just like, I'm getting bored of this now, because I know it's not this. Then I started to suffer from recurring BV, and I was like, this is really annoying now, because every 2 to 3 months it would come back, sometimes even quicker. So I was trying to learn about that. I stopped using tampons. I stopped using all shower gels, and I was just doing all of this stuff and changed all my underwear, and nothing was really working, to be honest, because this blood discharge stuff was just kept coming. Obviously the pain was getting worse. I had max exertional flare-ups, which obviously is a problem in a job that involves a lot of max exertion. And so kept going back to the GP. And then this one day I had a really good doctor that was like, she was actually doing some more swabs, and I was explaining some of my other symptoms, and she was like, I'm just going to refer you to gynecology. And I was like, hallelujah, perfect. And so that was in May last year. And then we went to the World Cup last year, so I was really preoccupied with that during the summer, just getting on through. And then
as
you do, just back in the grind, just getting through it. And then I had a letter in October, or a phone call in October, to say, your appointment's come up for gynecology, we're going to do an internal ultrasound. And I'd been told previously that don't get too excited, because they sometimes don't show anything, and it's just a tick box to move into the next step. So I go in, and and they perform in the internal ultrasound, and they're like, yes, there's quite a large cyst on the right ovary, and there's a slightly smaller one on the left ovary. The right one's filled with blood. And I was just like I'm literally just lying there still, and I'm just like,
With
right.
medical experience,
Yeah.
that sounds so frightening.
Yeah, I was like, okay, what does that mean? And she was like, well, it doesn't mean you have endometriosis, but it is indicative of endometriosis. I was like, right. So then that like finished up, and I just walked out of the room, just went straight to the toilet and just bawled my eyes out, because I was just so like, no one's ever said those words, like it could be this. And I had just like thought that through my own experience, or through my own research, I suppose. And so then after that, I went to my rugby team and I was like, look, this is what they found on the scan. The right ovary cyst was like 8 to 9 centimeters, which is pretty big. And as soon as I did that, they booked me an appointment with Anthony Griffiths, who's like the legend of Welsh endometriosis care. And went to see him. And in the appointment, he was like, oh yeah, you've got endometriosis. And he was like, I've been wondering when I'll see you. I was like, yeah, good one. And so then, but even then I didn't fully believe it, because I was like, obviously you've got to have a laparoscopy to be like officially diagnosed with it. So they said, I'm going to send you for an MRI. Had the MRI, and when I went to get the results, that was an overwhelming experience, because it was like a page and a half long, and I was like, is there really that much like going on? He showed me the scans, like my ovaries are like touching each other, everything's moved around, not where it should be. He's like, it's on your bowel, your rectum, your fallopian tubes, everywhere. And I was just like, what? It was so overwhelming. And yeah, that pretty much brings us to now, where next Thursday I have my first surgery, to remove as much as possible, basically, and to see what else is going on in there.
I mean, my ADHD brain is. Where do I start with so many different aspects of that? I don't know which thought to follow next. With it, before you were originally seen on the NHS, weren't you? And this is no inference on NHS versus private at all, but you saw someone originally who told you the only cure was a hysterectomy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so in December I had so it was end of November, start of December, I had these appointments with Anthony Griffiths after my ultrasound was in October. So then I didn't actually hear off the NHS again until March, start of April, where I went to have my follow-up appointment 6 or 7 months later. And bear in mind, the last thing I was told on the phone was, if you have severe pain, the cyst may have ruptured, call 999. That was the last thing anyone said to me. And luckily I had people around me and I had knowledge, and I'd spoken to experts. And so I knew a lot more about the condition than maybe somebody else would. But I was just thinking, if that was the last thing I'd been told, I'd be in a constant state of anxiety.
7 months.
And then yeah, exactly. So then I had this follow-up appointment, and obviously it's important I stay on the system with the NHS, because as soon as rugby ends for me, I'm back on the NHS and I'm doing it that way. So I go to this appointment, and I was obviously a bit nervous, because I didn't want to come across as a know-it-all, but I wanted to say, I've been diagnosed, I have surgery booked, and I'm on medication. And so I go into this room and I explain the journey so far and the symptoms and stuff. And then he's like, a gynecologist is like, and the only cure is, you know what it is, right? And I was like, there isn't one. And he was like, it's a hysterectomy. And I was like, no. And he was like, yeah. And I was like, I said, well, it's on my bladder, my bowel. Good book. I said, it's on my bladder, my bowel. Like, how is that? Sorry, like, how does removing like my reproductive organs change that? And he didn't really have. I felt then, I was like, just like, get me out of this room now. I was just like horribly panicked. But that was, and then that's the last I've heard on the NHS. So yeah, pretty crazy, because if I try and take away the other knowledge I have, and being, having spoken to a specialist and having my surgery booked and all of that, if the only two pieces of information I had were, you've got these cysts on your ovaries, and the next thing was, you
Have a
need a
hysterectomy.
hysterectomy, and I'm 26 years old, and it's like that. If I had no other knowledge, that would be daunting, and I'd be thinking, I need a hysterectomy. Then I need it now, you know.
Well, this
And
and this
they
is
also don't talk about the side effects of having a hysterectomy young and going into medical menopause and what that means longer term. It's just like, here's this thing, it'll cure it, it won't, and it has all these side effects that no one tells you about. So even for a while before I knew more, I was like, okay, well, hopefully I'll try my best to have some children, and then after that maybe I'll get a hysterectomy to try and help some of the pain. But actually then I'm in medical menopause, and then there's a whole host of things that goes with that. So crazy.
at any point in those kind of 8 months of first being told yes you've got it, to before you've kind of finally saw someone who approached it seriously and properly, did anyone encourage you to go back onto hormone treatments to stop it getting any worse in the meantime?
Yeah, so when I saw Anthony Griffiths in December, he recommended Diana Jest, and I've been reluctant to go on any form of contraception or to have any type of hormonal treatment for basically the entire time, because I was like, I want to be diagnosed. I don't want to be, because you can imagine the GP, when I was saying about these symptoms, they were just like, okay, but if we can try the pill or we can try the coil or whatever. And I was just like, I am not doing that until I get a diagnosis, because I don't want to go and mask the symptoms for another 4 years and then get to a point where I'm 30 and I come off the pill and all of a sudden I'm infertile or whatever. And so then when Anthony Griffiths suggested Diana Jess, I was like, now that I have my diagnosis, I have my surgery lined up, I will now try this, because I thought I'm just going to give into it, because something needs to change, because there was 5 days a month where I can't perform anywhere near my best. I can't even survive really. And there's another 25 days where I am constantly unsure of how I'm going to feel, how I'm going to wake up, what pain's going to be there, what bloating's going to be there. So I thought I'd give it a go. And bar the first month, which was pretty rough because I just kept having periods, like it would be like 5 days on, 2 days off, 5 days on. Um, that was crazy. But after that, it settled down, and actually my symptoms have really been regulated by it. It'll be really interesting to see actually post surgery if it's changed the size of the lesions at all, if it's shrunk the endometriomas, because there is some studies to show that. So it'll be interesting, but I feel a lot more in control now. I can do a lot more. I'm not dictated by my symptoms. Obviously, there are some bad days still. There are certain things that trigger symptoms, like no tomorrow. Like, for example, too much caffeine. This is a decaf. I pretty much drink only decaf now. I maybe have one caffeine coffee a day, if that. And there's a
Red
notable, yeah, like all of that kind of stuff. Trying to eat more whole foods, all that kind of thing. Um, Trying to, and less stress. That's been huge. If I'm stressed, we're not in a good way. And so trying to regulate all those things, I actually think I'm in a good position now. And it'll be interesting to see what more positive effect the surgery can have as well.
And that comes down to the fact that this is not just a hormone driven disease. There's
Yeah.
an immune system dysfunction that's going on. And so all those things that you've just said, they're kind of inflammatory triggers that are going to encourage that inflammatory response. And that's what can make the flare worse. But just
Yes.
going back to what you said about not wanting to mask it, and you didn't want to go on the pill until you had a diagnosis. And that is a trap that I think so many people fall into, because we have this fragmented healthcare system and this crisis at the minute. People are worried that if they go on the pill or take pain relief, yeah, your symptoms are better, but therefore there isn't that push to get a diagnosis. And what should actually be happening is you encourage and explain why it's important to go on the pill and take the pain relief, whilst also then investigating the potential cause. Because whilst you're not on it, that disease activity is continuing.
Brilliant.
It continues spreading, potentially causing more damage. Whereas, and I fell into this trap too. And like you said about you had knowledge, what if you hadn't had that knowledge? I was a doctor and I was working in gynecology at the time, and I had a similar surgeon to you, just kind of said, there's no cure, off you go. And or I was sent on to, I was having fertility issues. And he said, well, go and have IVF, which was never going to work. I lost
No.
£12,000. That was never going to work. Nobody told me, and it was actually the worst thing for me to pump me full of estrogen, which then made
Yeah.
the disease
The end will grow
even
more.
worse.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I had that same reluctance of every time they said take painkillers, I was like, why are you fobbing me off? Why are you not listening?
Yeah.
And it was only when I had the light bulb moment, when I actually did research after I'd had my hysterectomy, that I truly understood, oh my gosh, being on the pill is absolutely important whilst you're having those investigations, because you need to suppress that growth, because whilst that estrogen is having free reign of your endometriosis lesions, it's going to keep spreading, it's going to keep growing, whereas the pill suppresses that and slows that down. And like you say, there's evidence to show that it can shrink the endometriomas, and pre-surgery you want that disease to be sedative and kind of suppressed as much as possible to make it, the surgery, easier to kind of go in and mop up, so to speak. How are you feeling about approaching surgery? Because you've had lots of joint surgeries, so that process of having an operation is not unfamiliar, but it hits differently when it's internal organs.
Yeah.
And it's your reproductive organs, because
exactly.
you've not had any children.
Yeah.
How are you feeling about that?
It's like, I think the process of getting ready for surgery, I'm obviously, this will be my 6th total surgery, 7th if you include my tonsillectomy when I was a child, but I think the process of going in for surgery I'm pretty familiar with. But I am nervous about the fact that it is health surgery, if you want to call it that. It's on my internal organs. Given what I've been told about the scale of the disease and the different types of organs it's touching and moving around, I am nervous about that. And I think sometimes it's funny when you speak to doctors or surgeons, because they see it so often and it is their speciality. It's like, I'll just, like, I literally saw Anthony on Monday to just go through some like final consent forms, and he was like, so we'll just like go in, we'll just like cut as much out as we can, have a good look around in there, move everything background into the right place. We'll put some stents in there, blow up your stomach, light it up, see where else the disease is, and then we'll be good to go. It's just like, and I just think like it is overwhelming, but ultimately I'm just gonna have to go with it and see how it goes. I'm hoping that my experience in like that post surgery, like especially like after anesthetic and things like that, I know how I'm gonna feel after that. I just don't know how I'm gonna feel pain wise. I don't know. I don't know what it's gonna feel like, and I think everyone's experience post surgery is very different. Like some people are like, I came out and I felt instant relief. I felt amazing when I woke up. And some people are like, it took me 6 to 8 weeks to even be able to get out the house. So I think it's just, I'm trying to go in with an open mind and not trying to expect too much either way. I've given myself like plenty of time post-op. I'm not like rushing the return to rugby. I'm not rushing anything like that. We're going slow. A lot of my recovery will be focused on like core things, pelvic floor. I'm going to become a reformer Pilates girl, which is going to be fun. So like I'm in a way looking forward to the challenge of that, and also seeing how having that surgery is going to positively impact my performance as an athlete as well. Because it's something that has had a negative effect on me as an athlete, and I'm looking forward to being able to hopefully push my body to the max without having that anxiety around, is it going to trigger a flare. I'm fairly certain that, I don't know if there's any science on this, but I'm fairly certain that my like my lower core, I really struggle to use my lower core, and my back usually takes a lot of the work, but there's a lot of inflammation in there, so I'm not necessarily surprised that that's the case. So it'll be interesting to see the benefits around that. So nervous but excited. Energy levels, because it's hard to know, right? Like this is the way with the energy level stuff and the fatigue. Like I do get extremely tired, but it's hard to know, is that because I'm a professional athlete and I train many hours a day, or does the endo have an influence on that? And so you don't know, because it's all I've ever known. So it's like there are some days where I'm just like, I also have not diagnosed, but most definitely have ADHD. And so that combined with the endo, combined with the professional rugby thing, it's like, what is causing my tiredness? Why am I sat there staring at the wall, not being able to do anything? So it's interesting because it's all I've ever known. So how do I know what it is? Does that make sense?
And when you've got stage 4 endometriosis, so for people who are listening who are still kind of new to learn the information, the endometriosis has spread to the bowel, it's on multiple organs, it's causing fusions and things sticking together. It's quite a sticky, inflammatory disease, and it's unlike any other disease. You could have advanced endometriosis but no pain or no heavy bleeding. You could have a few small lesions that's stage 1, but horrific pain, horrific symptoms, because it doesn't, the way the dysfunctional immune system works and the pain receptors respond to estrogen is not the same from woman to woman. Two women could have an identical disease, very different symptoms, and respond to treatment very differently. With your endometriomas, are they on both ovaries or one?
They're on both ovaries, but the right one is the one that's filled with blood and is the bigger one. I think the left one is like 6 centimeters, something like that, and the right one is 9.
And are they hoping to remove them and then preserve as much of the ovary as possible?
That's the plan. The plan is to, and I think that's something I'm nervous about, is obviously the reproductive health side of things. And I mean, I try. You've just got to trust, haven't you? You've just got to trust that whatever is needed to be done will be done. I just hope that everything is able to be preserved, and it doesn't have. Yeah, I hope that it actually has a positive impact on my fertility, which is the plan. So because it is a scary thing. Like I don't want kids right this moment, but I do want them within the foreseeable future. It's something I've wanted since I was like, can remember even anything. Like when I was like 3-4 years old, I was holding a little baby doll. I've always wanted children, so it's just always kind of in the back of your mind, you know. And that was one of the first things I think when I had that internal ultrasound and they said about the cyst on my ovaries. I was like, what's this mean? Can I have can I have babies? Like it was just
It's like your special reserve tank, isn't it? And then when it starts going on those, you're like, it's your pot of gold that you want to be able to have the choice to use at some point.
Exactly. And I think like a lot of people my age are like, I don't need to worry about that yet. Oh, you know, I can have kids when I'm 35, it'll be fine. Like, but I worked with a fertility charity earlier in the year, and made some content around it. But actually, like, it's something that we need to start talking about younger, because if we do have these conditions such as endometriosis, such as PCOS, not PCOS, PMOS, now called PMOS, then I think we just need to start having those conversations so that we're in a position to be able to make informed decisions on our futures, not just, oh well, I'll think about that when I'm 30 plus, 35, I'll be fine. It's like, well, actually, if we can be in control now and understand what's going on now, we still may want to wait until we're 32, 33, 34, 35, but we know that we're in more of a control of that. Like if it means I need to freeze my eggs now, then I'd rather do that now than find out at 32 actually your egg reserve's very low, you know? So
yeah, exactly. And it's about that choice, isn't it? It's about having
choice. That was the word I was looking for.
And what's the plan for afterwards? Because endometriosis has no cure, so the goal for people listening for this surgery is to remove as much of the endometriosis lesions as possible, which with the right specialist, that can sometimes be enough to then manage with the pill or much better quality of life afterwards. Some people, those lesions can then return and grow back, and then you're also at risk of adhesions and scarring because of the surgery itself. What's your plan for afterwards? Because some surgeons take an approach where they put you into an induced menopause for 6 months after this surgery to kind of help with the pain. Some prefer so they use the Zoladex injections, which we call the fancy medical name GnRH analogs, but put people into a chemical menopause. Some surgeons will put the marina coil in so that you've got longer term hormone protection again, to stop that estrogen from reactivating anything that's been left. And some surgeons or patients choose to go back natural afterwards. What are your thoughts? What are you approaching?
So my plan is to remain on Dianogest, the medication I'm on now. That's working really well for me now with all the endo that I have. So I'm hoping that it will hopefully have the same positive effect post surgery. And I think for me, lifestyle stuff is going to be huge. Like I'm in a job where essentially on a daily basis I go into fight or flight, and that is going to trigger cortisol. That's going to trigger stress. That triggers inflammation. Like my muscles get hit and then they get inflamed, and that's how they repair. So when I actually thought about that, I was like, everything else that I do outside of rugby has to be about restoring, recovering, like being relaxed. And I think for too long I thought that outside of rugby I needed to have another career, I needed to be doing all of these things. But I actually then, after I got diagnosed, was like, that's actually really counterproductive, because if I'm doing all of that, then I'm not recovering, which is going to cause my symptoms to be worse, and then I'm just going to crash and burn. So for me now, outside of rugby, I do a lot of stuff with social media. That's kind of like my stuff that I enjoy doing, but that's not too stressful. Like I can be in control of that. But it's about, how do I create a lifestyle that is conducive to controlling the disease, to keeping my cortisol levels as low as possible when I'm not like running into people for 80 minutes. And just kind of focusing on myself a bit more, putting myself first, so that I'm, if there's an event that someone wants me to but I don't want to go there, I'm not going there, because it's not good for me and it's not good for my endometriosis. So I think that, combined with the medication I'm on now, we're going to see how that goes, I think.
And I love that holistic approach. And it's funny because I was speaking to someone yesterday about that holistic approach to endometriosis, any kind of health condition, but particularly with endometriosis, because of that immune dysregulation that comes with it. Like I say, anything that having that awareness of your body and being in tune is really important for something like endometriosis, to discover what triggers those flares, behavior,
And I think,
diet.
and on that, interestingly, like I think I was worried that if I was taking hormones, I wouldn't be able to be in tune with my body, because I thought, well, it's all fake. It's all fake. So the only way I can be in tune with my body is if I'm having a menstrual cycle, so that then I know this week I'm going to feel great. This week I'm going to feel crap. This week is like a write off. But actually, now I'm in a place where I don't get me wrong, I don't get the peak of like concentration and focus and like energy like I did when I was ovulating. But now I'm like, I would do this. Yeah, I am on fire. And then I would like have these ideas, I'd start them, and then I'd be like, oh, I can't do this anymore. And then it would just repeat. Whereas now I'm just kind of like just doing this. And actually for me, I'm way more in tune with my body now. And there's still things that trigger my endo, there's still things that calm it down, but just to a way easier, more manageable degree than when I was being reluctant to taking hormones, because I thought that was how you were in tune with your body, which is just so silly. So silly.
And that, it's not silly though, and that's what so many women, myself included, think of this, because
you can understand like the rationality behind it when you're thinking about
and that's what I put in the book, and it comes back to the fact that we're primal beings and we're trained and hardwired to listen to pain, listen to our bodies, so that we can have an awareness of what's going on. But with endometriosis, that pain is misfiring. Those pain signals are not proportionate, so you need to suppress them. You need to shut that down. It's very much needed to kind of do anything you can to ignore not listening to what's going on unless something changes. But those pain signals, it's a natural instinct to want to stay in tune with it and not mask it. But with endometriosis, it's really important to do what you can to be functional. And what you said was so interesting, that you'd already spotted that peak of estrogen giving an energy burst, and particularly if you are neurodiverse, people who are neurodiverse are more sensitive to those hormone shifts, and that steady state of, yes, you miss the energy boost, but actually for something like this, it's really important to have that. And that's why I love menopause, because I've not got those peaks and troughs of estrogen and progesterone. My mood is the same every single day. I know what my energy is every single day, give or take the lupus. But that shift and that fluctuation when with hormones can be really intense, can be a lot.
Something actually, just to touch on, I'm not sure how long you want to go on for, but I can talk about this for days. Something that I think is really interesting is obviously endometriosis is very driven by estrogen. And correct me if I'm wrong, but endometrial tissue, does that release estrogen as well? So it's very estrogen. Is that it?
Estrogen is fueling the growth, and it kind of
Yeah.
creates the endometrial tissue to it's reactive to the estrogen. So the
Got
estrogen
you.
is fueling it to kind of
Yeah.
grow and thicken and spread. But
Yeah.
it's very estrogen sensitive.
Okay. So then because I basically, when I was on the pill, when I was 18 to 22, I didn't have a single injury. I was injury free. Before that, I had ruptured my ACL. Then I was injury free. Then when I came off the pill, within the 3 years that I've been off the pill, I've had a broken ankle. That was kind of freak accident, but then a ruptured ACL and 2 meniscus injuries that have both led to surgery, and then multiple like joint laxities at my knee. And this is as I've obviously grown more endometriosis. And then so my thoughts were obviously around estrogen. Estrogen creates ligament laxity. And when I look at all of my teammates that have had really quite significant ligament injuries, they're all of the ones with endometriosis symptoms. And that kind of blew my mind. And I think that there's a big gap that needs to be looked at there. Because even you look at like players like Leah Williamson, she did her ACL, endometriosis, etc. Yeah.
There is a reason for that is beginning to be explored in the research. And it's funny because you're suspected neurodiverse, you've got endometriosis.
They're all linked. 100%, I agree.
There is an overlap, and they're starting to try and look at what the genetic cause is, and they're suspecting it's a link with connective tissue. So you're more likely to be hypermobile, have things like lupus or POTS syndrome with endometriosis and be neurodiverse. And they're discovering that there is a genetic link. So yes, you've already really kind of spotted it. And
I was like honestly, I was looking at all of my, my friends. I was like, also definitely they're neurodiverse. And
I was going to say, well, are they
hang on a
neurodiverse?
minute, like you've been diagnosed with endo. You've definitely got endo, and you've both definitely got ADHD, and you've both ruptured your ACLs. There can't there was 3 of us, and then there's another, actually 4. There's 4 of us within one team. I'm like, that is not a coincidence.
Volunteer yourselves for the research that's ongoing right now.
I absolutely will, because honestly, as soon as I thought about that, I was like, this can't be a coincidence. It can't, because it's too, it can't be. It can't be.
The autoimmune aspect as well. If you've got endometriosis, because your body is going through an immune dysfunction process, you're in an immune response state, you're more likely to develop other autoimmune conditions. So you're at higher risk of developing lupus, rheumatoid arthritis, MS, all those other autoimmune things. They're all in the same category, because part of the process behind endometriosis is that the immune system fails to contain it. And so if you're stage 4 endometriosis, you're advanced degree disease. So your immune system is going through a bigger immune response. That's the science geek. I get really geeky about the connective tissue. And because for me, I was the same. When my lupus was managed better and they got the right medication for my lupus, my endometriosis got better. And then it was like this chain reactive cycle of getting one thing being managed. This is why in the healthcare, we don't look at things as an overlap. We're not very good at that. You'll see the orthopedics, but you'll see physio. But actually, you've got to look at these as a collective. Someone here is neurodiverse, they're ADHD, they've got hypermobile joints, and they're complaining of period pain. We need to recognize that automatically increases their risk of potentially having endometriosis, because
I also think it highlights the importance of speaking about it as well, because if we all just don't talk about this, we don't talk about actually, I really struggle to concentrate, or, oh, I've got period pains, or, oh, I suffered with this injury. Do you know what I mean? Like all of those types of things. And that's why I'm so much of an advocate for speaking openly on social media about it. Like I'm pretty much, as soon as I got diagnosed, I was like, I am telling the world about this, because there was never like a, oh, but doesn't that make you feel a bit vulnerable? It was like, no, because I'm so grateful that I finally got answers for this, but there's so many people that don't, and there's so many people that may not even know the word endometriosis that have it. So it's important for me to be able to get that to as many people as possible. In the same way as when I get injured, I talk about it. When I'm struggling with my mental health, I talk about it, because other people are struggling with it too. So why are we going to try and hide, you know?
It
Yeah.
makes someone else feel less alone, feel validated, and because whenever someone says, "Oh, how are you?" I've got no filter. If I'm having a bad day, I'll say I'm rubbish today, because if two people are both masking, both saying that they're fine, they feel even more alone and more vulnerable, because they think everybody else is fine, but I'm not. What's wrong with me? But actually, everyone's dealing with something. And if we were a bit more real about these things and start having the conversation of, yeah, I've had a miscarriage. Oh, me too. It creates like that support system, and it being real and vulnerable actually makes you stronger, because it opens access to a lot more support options. That kind of does bring me kind of nicely to kind of one of the last questions that I kind of wanted to touch on with you, because I'm aware that the audio will struggle if we hit beyond an hour. Although I could talk about this all day with you, Gwen. And I was going to say, oh my God, my ADHD brain. I was going to say, we're going to do another live, aren't we?
Yeah.
After your surgery, to see how you're getting on, to see how you found it, what the experience was, so that people then listening can follow your journey afterwards. So thank you. That'll be nice to share with people.
Yeah.
If you could go back to your younger self, that Gwen who started her periods, training, feeling dismissed, thinking it was not, what would you wish that you could go back and tell her? What would you wish that you'd known then?
I think it is as simple as painful periods are not normal. Like, it's not normal, because everything I saw around me, and everything I saw around me, people were just like, oh, it's just periods. Like, periods they're painful. And actually, they're not. They're not meant to be any more painful than potentially 2 paracetamol to settle the pain, just a slight cramp. It's not meant to be anything worse than that. It's not meant to be you're bent over, you can't function. That's not normal. And so I think it would be as simple as that, to be honest, because I'm not saying that would have changed everything, because I still would have had to go through the whole process of being diagnosed. But I think, or I would have said, there's this thing called endometriosis. You might want to read up on it. So one of those two things.
It's hard to know. Looking back is, hindsight is not, doesn't help people, but it's interesting, because I often think, how would my journey have been differently? And if you've got the type of body composition, if your immune system and you've got endometriosis, and that's the way you're wired, you're genetically predestined for that, you're always going to have a more difficult time of it. But with the right intervention early on, you don't have to get to a point of having a hysterectomy in your 20s. If you got the right information, the right support, and the right treatments, I know that probably, unless I was going to be on the pill all my life, I would have had to have had a hysterectomy at some point. But I could have avoided having bowel damage and bladder damage and multiple miscarriages, all that stuff, had I known earlier on the right information. And I think that's what's key, is it might not necessarily change the end point, but where you get to in that end point and how much damage is done in the process, that's the key difference here. Endometriosis has no cure, but it has treatment options for managing it and how much damage it's going to do, because you need to get your life back. You should not have your life dictated by periods. And it's going to be so interesting to see how your performance and your strength, like you say, your energy levels change once you've healed from the surgery. I'm really looking forward to kind of touching in again and seeing how you get on with it after the surgery. But thank you so much for talking with me, Gwen. And seriously, all the best of luck for the operation. And send me a message, and thinking of you and sending you all the strength.
Thank you very
And
much.
thank you for talking.
It's been great to chat, and yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing how the surgery goes and catching up afterwards, and yeah, hopefully it all goes well.
Yeah, my best advice is take the pain relief afterwards.
Yeah,
Get
I
moving.
will. Don't worry.
I don't think there's going to be any fear of you not wanting
Yeah,
to move
it'll be
afterwards.
Okay. It'll be okay. Thank you.
Well, thank you really for watching, and I'm going to be sharing it as a podcast as well next week. So thank you everybody for watching. Hang on. I think if you can stay, I think we can stay on. Yes. Boom. Okay. To download your video, leave this in your archive. Okay. We did it.
Yes.
That went so fast. I was like, oh my God.
Yeah, I know. I was like, it's nearly an hour. I know it goes so fast,
Oh
doesn't
my
it?
gosh. I didn't swear. Yes.
Yeah, good job. Me neither. That's good for me.
How did you
My
find
dog's
it?
my dog's just been curled up in a ball next to me like the whole time.
Oh,
Max, come here.
I tricked mine out. I heard a bang at some point. Oh, look at you.
There she is. Girl.
She's beautiful. She was so good.
That was good. It went well.
Hang on. I might have to call you back because it's like pinging off the. Let me call you back. Or just.
Okay.
It's going to think. Let me call you back to say thank you properly before I
No worries.
do this. I'm going to lose the video. Set out the video. Not yet.